Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to see all of you here today. My name is Leanne Putz, and I'm the Chairman and Representative Director of Mondelez Japan. And in fact, if you don't know what Mondelez is, that's okay. It is a bit complicated to pronounce, but I'm sure you know our brands. I'm sure anybody eat an Oreo biscuit in their life? Oreo cookie? Yes. You'll also find in your bag, you'll find some Claret's gum. So if you find yourself falling asleep throughout today, which I'm sure you won't, please feel free to reach into your bag and you'll be able to enjoy some wonderful Claret's gum. So that's enough about me. This is actually all about you today. And the topic that we're talking to today is about fostering change for yourself, but also looking at the three important people in your life. Now, I would like to introduce briefly our panel here and the topic for today. You will notice there is a change to the program from what you have there. So let's see if you can pick the difference on who's there and who isn't. But first, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves in a moment, but you have right to my far left over here, we have Brett Dandoy, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Deutsche Securities, amongst other titles, and he'll be able to introduce himself very shortly. We're also delighted to have to his right, Meir, thank you very much for joining us, from the Financial Services Division of Robert Walters. And we have here, which is a new person, you don't have his bio in your document today. But I'd like to introduce, I'd like to introduce Andrew Manterfield, who's an executive coach, and he'll talk a little bit later. And right, just directly to my left here, I'd like to thank Akiko from Google, who's joining us here today as well. So, the topic that we have here, I'd ask George or someone to forward to the next slide, please. Is there someone who can... Oh, there he is. Thank you, George. Great, so the topic that we wanted to talk to today was around coaches, mentors and sponsors. This description here comes from some work from Catalyst, the Catalyst organisation. I encourage you to have a look at their website. And so we'll talk through some of this topic and also some of the differences. A coach talks to you, a mentor talks with you, and a sponsor talks about you. We'll come back to some of those ideas and definitions as we go through the discussion today. We'll focus on mentoring, on coaching, and on sponsorship. And we'll also talk about why each of those are important. And each of those, the coaching, mentoring, sponsoring, each of these people in your professional life have the same end goal in mind, which is about furthering your potential and helping you to achieve your potential. But they come at it from quite different perspectives, and the purpose in their life and the purpose in your life could be quite different. And we'll explore a bit of that. But what I'd like to do now is ask each of the panellists to give you a short introduction to themselves and why they've decided to say yes to being on this panel. Brett, you first.
All right. Good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Brett Dandoy from Deutsche Bank in Japan. My title is Chief Operating Officer and Deputy President of the Securities Company. I'm also the Chief Operating Officer for the country of Japan. And we won't go into details as to why they're different, but we have multiple entities here. I've been with Deutsche for 16 years. I was with, I started out in this industry. My entire career has been in the financial industry, primarily in the front office, in the equities, sales-related type of areas, and then ran compliance for a period and am now the Chief Operating Officer. Prior to Deutsche, I spent 12 years at Lehman Brothers in New York, Hong Kong, and Japan. And I've been the COO for the past 7 years. I've been in Japan for 28 years in total, over 3 different periods. Just briefly on Deutsche Bank, just so some of you may not be familiar with it, we are an American Chamber of Commerce event, and sometimes people wonder why Deutsche Bank is involved at all. At that, there is a German chamber, but clearly ACCJ is the most influential chamber in Japan, and it hosts events like this, and so it's something that Deutsche feels very strongly about, not only this WID type of conference, but just being part of the American Chamber of Commerce in total. We've been one of the top performing, despite, I guess I should say, all the global headlines about Deutsche Bank that are out there. The Japan business has actually been one of the top performing businesses for Deutsche Bank, and actually we're one of the top performing for the last 4 or 5 years of international global investment banks here in Japan. We're a wholesale bank. We also have transaction banking and asset management in addition to our broker-dealer, and we have about 800 staff in Japan. Why I chose to say yes to this panel, I was encouraged by some of my staff, certainly, to do it, and often our CEO would participate in these types of things, and I've actually probably had significantly more opportunities to be involved in the mentoring programs and those types of things than he has, and so I think it made a lot of sense for me to participate in this, and because of that experience, I'm happy to try and share some of those experiences and thoughts with you today.
Right.
Hi, my name is Mai Soi. I'm a manager of HR team at Global Waters. We are the recruitment agency focused on bilingual professionals. And we've been in Japan more than 15 years, and my team is in charge of supporting hiring HR professionals, like head of HR, HR business partner, and HR manager. Previously, I worked for investment bank and private equity firm, and I was in charge of selling alternative investment product to the Japanese pension fund. And after the Lehman shock, I thought it's quite tough, and I registered with Global Waters, and this is how I joined. And the reason why I say yes to be here is because my sponsor and boss Joshua asked me. And I'm raised and educated in Japan, and it's first time for me to speak in front of everyone in English. But thanks to my great sponsor and mentor, I can develop my career in an investment bank and an international fund like Global Waters. So today I will share my experience, and I want to learn a lot from professional members. ありがとうございます。
Andrew.
Hello everybody, my name is Andrew Mansfield. I'm an independent coach, and I coach people one-to-one and one-to-many. I work for a variety of different companies. A lot of the people in this room, actually, I've worked with their companies, and some of them I've actually coached. I coach globally, but most of my work is in Asia. And the majority of the people I work with, English is their second language. And when Leanne asked me to do this, I actually looked through my records and I realised that the majority of the people I've coached in the past 6 years were women, which quite surprised me actually. So I've worked for myself for 6 years. I live just down the road actually, in central Tokyo with my wife Nobuko and my 2 children. I've got a boy, Shintaro, who's 4, and a little girl called Hanako, who's 7. Before I worked for myself, I used to sit in your chairs. I used to work for a company called Diageo. Diageo is the world's biggest adult drinks company. I worked in 2 functions. I started as a salesperson. I was their sales director in the UK when the company was created, and then I moved to HR. And I did HR in Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia. And latterly, I was their HR director for Asia and their HR director for Australia. So, why am I here? I'm here because my friend Leanne asked me. No, that's important. That's one of the reasons I'm here, because I respect her. The other reason I'm here is because my purpose is to find the greatness in every person I meet and see that greatness live every day. And this is about helping people to be their best. So I'm here to live my purpose.
Okay, of all, I'm so pleased to be here. And not only I was invited, but as well, of course. I started my life, I was born in a really, really countryside of Japan. You know, I never seen gaijin when I was really younger time. And although I was born in a really, Choshi, if you know, if you haven't been there, we have maybe just 3 or 5 signals in the town, that small town I was from. And I didn't have anything to learn from except like a television or the information that I can gather from newspaper. And always the information was the power for me to learn something new world. And also, not only that, I really loved like a Michael Jackson and also the Charlie's Angels, original one. And that was my dream that I want to be like. So I decided to go to the Boise, Idaho, where I went to high school. I know that's America was. But you know, all the points that I came through, and after that I worked for the TV station and then worked for the Bloomberg to start up their business and television operation in Asia Pacific, and then investigation committee for the Fukushima nuclear accident, and now it's Google. So all through my life is information, and that was the power. And how to make myself be here is always the people who helped me to come here. It was maybe the coach, maybe the mentor, or maybe the sponsor and friend and the family. So I'm so passionate about being here to talk and share my little experience and learn from all of you. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And why did I say yes to facilitating this panel? I think a yes, again, it was because over my career, coaches, mentors and sponsors have played a really important part in my own personal development to be a better leader. And also the more I've seen that play out in my own life, the more important I recognise it is for others as well. And that it takes a team, right? It takes a lot of people to help be able to build your story. And that's why I decided to say yes to this. I'm really very excited to explore these 3 dimensions. And we'd like to kick off today talking about actually the one in the middle. Let's talk about mentors. It's probably the one that we're most familiar with. We've heard a lot about. And who in the audience here has either been a mentor or has been mentored? So we have great. So you've also got other people now that you know in this room that you can also talk to afterwards about their own experiences. So we'd like to kick off the conversation here, and actually I think I'll go straight back to you and ask you to talk about both what has mentoring meant to you over your career with a couple of stories, and also both formal and informal mentors, and if you can talk a bit about the difference.
I don't know if I can specifically describe as you beautifully talked about, but always I think my career, always someone is around supporting me, and I never say you're my mentor, or he or she would say I am your mentor. Just like it gradually, organically happened. And when within the company and externally, I would usually go to the external people. The reason is it might be safer sometimes because they can give me the kind of third point of view. So they could help me to understand certain things. And whenever I was lost in the forest, in a sense, like I don't know what to do. And one person who is, again, I would say he's a mentor, he said, okay, think about when your boss selected you to do a certain mission. Do you know why he or she said so or give you that project? Then I kind of started to think about it. Oh, okay, I got it. Maybe that's my strength. I should do it that way. So even those people are not in my industry, like the media or information industry, they could give me that kind of a high level view. And now I'm in Google, and I have a great mentors, actually, not in Japan, or in Japan as well, but externally, I mean, Singapore, other areas. But they do see that differently, the market is different move. So I can get the different ideas or the reference information that I can apply to my business. And also I can see things differently. So always the mentors to me was helping me to giving me the different insights, different view. So that's how I was really helped by.
Thank you. Brett, and just from an organisation perspective, I mean, in Mondelez, for example, we do have formal mentoring programs, as well as encouraging people to go and find other people to talk to. How would, in your experience, what's worked best in Deutsche Bank, and what can it do, and what shouldn't it do?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a formalized mentoring program at Deutsche Bank, and I'm talking about here in Japan specifically. And it crosses over all levels of the organization, from junior all the way to senior staff, though it's concentrated probably primarily in sort of the mid-levels. But again, anybody is possible to participate in that formalized program. And it's both for men and for women. And at times we've actually run specific women-only training programs. So because it's formalized, we have actually signed agreements between the mentor and the mentee as to sort of the rules of the road, if you will, how often you meet. Generally it starts off as a 6-month contract, if you want to use that term, period to do it, and with regular meetings throughout that, and sort of what's expected between the two, and as I said, the regularity of meetings. I think the important thing to remember in that mentor-mentee relationship is that, first of all, you can talk about, as the mentee, talk about absolutely anything you want to talk about. I mean, I know I'm here to talk specifically about, careers and career progression, and that's certainly a very, very important one, perhaps the most important. But throughout sort of our daily working lives, we all come across times when maybe we have difficulty in managing the team that we're managing, or perhaps discussing something with a difficult boss that we have, or it could be our own career progression, or it could be even something on a personal basis, having nothing to do perhaps even with the company. So I've seen, and I've had the opportunity to probably be mentors, I don't even know, somewhere 7 to 10 different individuals probably over the last 10 years at Deutsche. And those are the types of things that we've talked about. I think the important things are, first of all, that we also make sure that things are kept confidential. Very, very important, especially if you're dealing, like I say, with some of these sensitive topics for an individual. And so we make sure that our mentees and mentors are not in the same reporting line to ensure both independence and that you can talk about some of those, what we'd say, confidential or very people-specific matters and not have any trust issues between it. So you do not talk about those types of things without permission with anybody else that's talked about. We also then, for new grads, we actually have a buddy program. So it's like a mentoring program, a bit more informal as opposed to the formalized one. But again, as it says on the screen here, the driver behind the program is the mentee. Okay, it's the mentee's responsibility to sort of drive things forward. And that's different than the sponsorship that we'll talk about later, which is really driven by the sponsor. But in this case, we have the mentee is responsible for driving things forward. It's a great, from an organizational standpoint, we find it to be a great retention tool. It's a training opportunity or a training tool as well for individuals, as well as to help people just progress in their careers. So, and it's low or virtually no cost. And that's important for almost everybody. I mean, that's the reality. Times are tough throughout the world, certainly in the financial industry, but I think everywhere. And cost is always an issue. I might share just a couple of the challenges that I think we've come across. First of all, how do you become a mentee, or how do you become a mentor for that matter? We have traditionally just asked for volunteers for both of those roles. And what we have sometimes found is we have more volunteers to be mentors than we do mentees. And so the challenge there sometimes is also some of the people who volunteer to be mentors maybe aren't qualified, whatever that means, I mean, just being perfectly frank with everybody, right? That you look at, there are people that perhaps you don't want to be a mentor from a management or a senior management perspective. So that's a reality you just have to deal with and figure out how you're going to allocate those people or what you're going to do with them in that case. In terms of the mentee, and I think this may be, I don't know if it's specific to Japan or Asia or not, But I think there's a perception that if you volunteer to be a mentee, to say you want a mentor, that it's a sign of weakness, right? And that, oh, you're not confident enough, or you're not sure enough in your ability to do the work or to progress your career on your own. And I think that keeps many people back from asking for a mentor or volunteering to be a mentee. And I would say regarding that, no one should feel that that's the situation. I just almost say it's the opposite. Those who are mature enough and have the confidence enough to actually put up their hand and volunteer and say, yeah, I want to help my career and help myself. I want a mentor if I can. I think those are probably some of the best candidates. And lastly then, I think one of the other challenges is we all live busy lives, and what we found often at Deutsche is that the mentor, while the mentee's driving the relationship, the mentor often cancels the meetings, maybe at the last minute, right? Saying they're busy. And so they're not maybe taking it as seriously as they should be taking it. And this goes on maybe week after week, or if they're monthly meetings, or whatever it is. And that's a bad thing to do. So if you're in here and you're a mentor, or you think about being a mentor in the future, I would recommend that you really take it quite seriously. And you do not cancel those meetings. They're important meetings for the mentee. You've agreed to that, fulfill that role in that relationship, and you need to hold those meetings. And if you have to cancel, that's fine, and you immediately reschedule, but you don't just blow it off. So from a corporate perspective, that's sort of the way I see things.
Thank you, Brett. And Maya-san, can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a mentee and what Robert Walters is doing in this space?
Okay, at Robert Walters, we have a mentee system, and mentee choose mentor from the different division. And in my case, I chose mentor from industrial team, who is a founding member of industrial area, and he has experience at South for manufacturing. And because I'm finance, I'm not familiar with area, and industrial B2B sector is still male dominated. So before I chose him as a mentor, it was a bit difficult for me to get into the sector. For example, I contacted head of HR from the sector compared to finance. But thanks to him, he supported me a lot, and he often give advice and invite me for the client meeting. And now within my HR team, B2B became one of the most important and profitable business. But I couldn't achieve, obviously, without support from mentor. And one thing I thought, how can we improve, or what I'm not sure is how mentor treat private, sensitive information, like Brett mentioned. So there's no clear guideline at Robert Walters. So sometimes I'm not sure how much I can disclose. So I speak openly with a mentor outside of work. And if I speak with him, I'm more careful, because I think there's the risk that he might share with our members. Of course, he won't, but I want to know what kind of guideline you guys have to treat such a sensitive information as a mentor.
Is there a policy that the Google plan?
Well, we don't have the system in place in terms of the mentor system. We do have the coaching system.
Mm-hmm.
So coaching is kind of similar to what Brett talked about. We don't have the contract, but we do have nothing is going to go out from this room, something like that kind of rule. And we trust each other. So definitely we do need to have a psychological safety there to trust the person to disclose everything that you have. And as you said, and also Brad, you mentioned that readiness of the mentees and mentors, both of them are very important. In our case, it's coaching system. So it is always, that maturity also comes with that kind of, careful information management is also always aligned together, I think.
And Maya, what's the biggest thing you've learned from your mentor? What's the 2 or 3 things that really stand out for you in terms of what you personally learned from that relationship?
First of all, as I said, I learned a lot about industry. Although it's a foreign firm within B2B, there's a special rule that I never know, like how to treat senior people or how to start meeting, those little things. And I also learned how can I develop my career within the firm. So between me and my mentor, I set up a SMART goal with a specific timeline. For example, I set up being a manager and spread HR team into 2 teams, but I got up the consultant size from 4 to 8, and within 12 months. And we catch up every 10 weeks, and my mentor share all his experience developing his career from associate to managers. This is what I learned the most from my mentor.
Yeah, right.
And I think, something that Maya said there, if I might share, I think, she touched on what we might say is common sense things, like how to run a meeting, for example, right? I think that's probably the majority of what goes on in a mentor-mentee relationship are small, what I'll call improvements or changes in conduct or behavior at the margin, right? We're not changing people's personalities or anything through either mentoring, sponsorship, or coaching, okay, in my opinion. I mean, it's a lot of help with what, I say, to some person, one person might be common sense through their own experience, but to another person, they've never experienced something, or it's a new environment that they're in, and they don't know how to deal with something. And so it can be some very small things that go a long ways to helping somebody. And if I'll give one example, and this is from someone that I mentored, and a reasonably senior person that I mentored a number of years ago. He ran a team of people, about 12 people, and he was struggling with his staff not doing the things that he was asking them to do, for whatever reasons. And as we talked about it, I asked him, I said, have you ever acknowledged when they do something, have you acknowledged them for actually having done it and completed it on time, or in a way that met your expectations? And he said, no. And this was a Japanese individual. And he said, no, not really, I've never done that. I said, well, why don't you, over the next month, we met monthly, I said, over the next month, why don't you just say thank you every time, or as often as you think appropriate, to people when they do something. And that can be verbal thank you, or an email back when someone reports into you on something, just an acknowledgement that, hey, thank you for completing that, doing that, whatever. And he came back to me the next month, so excited that I did that, and he says, it was amazing the change that happened with people, right? From a simple little thing of just starting to acknowledge people and recognizing them and appreciating the effort that they were doing. So I think those are the sort of small victories that come in a mentor-mentee relationship. And we're not talking about big things most of the time.
I think, from my own experience as well, I think what we've touched on here is that with a mentor-mentee relationship, there's sometimes a discussion about the what, and sometimes a discussion about the how. And depending on your mentor, you might want to focus a little bit more on how things are done in your organisation, or how you might behave. And there's also the content piece as well, that you heard from Mayo-san, that sometimes it's actually about learning something new about the content of your job, particularly if you're moving into a new job. I remember when I moved into my first general manager job, having a mentor who had done that before, about 5 or 6 years before, was hugely helpful, so that if there was a new situation, new content, I could go to him and talk to him about that. And also on the how side, it was also being able to say, give me some feedback about how I am operating as a leader, and how can I be more open, more inclusive. So on both the what and the how, a mentor can be hugely helpful to help you navigate the organisation. One thing I want to go back to is that we've talked about different mentors, and I want to ask the panel, and Brett, maybe you mentioned about 7 to 10 years, or not 7 to 10 relationships. Typically, how often have the mentoring relationships lasted? A month, a week, 10 years?
Well, as I say, when we have the formalized mentoring program at Deutsche, we started off at 6 months. So we have a fixed 6 months, which then a renewal of another 6 months. So generally, it could go up to a year. We generally don't have any go over a year, to my experience. So 6 months to a year with then regular meetings, I say either monthly or at least monthly, at a minimum monthly, and maybe they're bi-weekly in some cases. But that doesn't mean that it ends after the 6 months of the year, and this is perhaps what you're getting at. You have the formalized piece may end after 6 months or a year, but those have gone on for many years after that official contract or relationship expired. You know, if they needed something, wanted to come consult me on something, I was always welcoming and open to someone wanting to come and talk to me about that. That goes true for people who weren't my mentees as well, of course, but particularly those who I developed a personal bond with and talking about confidential things at times that I think as a mentor you want to continue that informal, I guess, mentoring after the official period is over.
Yes.
Just reflecting on the conversation, one of the things that strikes me is the word mentor. And if you go to different parts of the world, the word means different things. And if you listen to the panel speaking, when it's successful, it's usually about thinking about what do you really need and thinking about the individual. And I think if you start with that, what do I need? There's a word up there that says guide. And a simple word is a guide. And then think about, what do I need this guide to help me with? So you hear the examples of it could be 6 months, it could be for life. I like doing it in this way, I like to sort this often. I think that's when it's successful. But realise that for different people it can mean different things. And then another observation for me is you listen to the people from the different companies and they take things like coaching and mentoring and make them personal in a very effective way. Yeah? But I think this thing about thinking about your need is very, very important.
Okay, how long have you've got a couple of different mentors. How long have some lasted?
Still on.
Yeah.
Over maybe 10 years even. Yeah, so maybe I don't contact that person that often, but sometimes when I really need, then I'll go to the person for certain companies. And I have a different person for certain things, maybe the leadership, as you said, for the leadership or the context or the market or the business. So they can give different, powerful ideas.
What about you, Mo?
My mentor outside of work is more than 15 years because it's based on a trust. I don't have a reason to change. I want to continue to be a mentor-mentee relationship forever. And at our company, we don't have a specific contract term like Deutsche, but we can change mentor every year after 12 months if you realize that you're not learning or you want to learn anything like something new from different division, you can change.
I think that's important too because I think I've had some mentors which have been a long time, but I've also had very short-term mentors. Again, if I've gone into say a new job, and I remember I did have a mentor for some time who I actually moved country and I had kept the mentoring relationship. And then as I was moving into more of a regional role and multi-country role, and actually the mentor I had before was very much focused on just one thing. So what we'd learned together before, it didn't actually work anymore. Now we're still friends, but I don't actually treat that as a mentoring relationship. And I think sometimes we're a little bit concerned, sometimes also to give up a relationship if we feel that its time might have ended. I think there are seasons for mentors as well, depending on where you are in your career. That's something to think about as you're thinking about the mentor relationships. Because I know sometimes some of my team have said, I'm worried I might get stuck with this person forever. So I think that's why I think a contract does help because it helps you to get to know them. And if that finishes and you find you have a really strong connection, you can keep moving that forward. And if you don't, that's okay. You can let it naturally lapse.
One more thing, if I may. So I think the people, you are here and you must be maybe mentor and also mentees, right? So, and perhaps you might be the mentees of mentors of male and female, or what kind of whatever. And it is really important as let's say the leaders to understand about inclusion. Not thinking about only women needs to be this way or the man needs to be this way. Try to take out all this unconscious bias out. So that's what I wanted to mention.
It's important, and I'd say that one more thing on that is I'm often asked to coach to mentor women, and that's great, and I love doing that. And one of my commitments I ask from my female mentors is that they also have a male mentor. That's my agreement. I won't mentor them unless they also have a male mentor. Because I think it is really important to be able to find both, to actually have difference again and have diversity in the kind of advice and counsel and guidance that you're getting. So if you're looking for mentors, feel free. I mean, look for that diversity as well. Yes, please.
Just as an example on that, when I worked with Diageo in the UK, our MD had a mentor who was one of the women who worked in the sales force who'd only been with the company about 3 years. So we use reverse mentoring as well, because we saw that was a way for him to understand what it was like to be a woman working in our sales force.
Well, I'd like to shift gears now. We can obviously come back to some of this in the Q&A as well, but let's talk a little bit more now about coaching. And again, in my personal experience, coaching has been absolutely critical, actually, to me learning more about myself. But I think for all that, I'm sure everyone here in this room, wants to be able to learn and grow. And coaching for me has been really important for me to take some time to reflect. And sometimes coaching can be perceived as being a little bit selfish, like I talk about myself. I don't want to do that. Or uncomfortable. However, I can say that it has actually helped me be able to grow significantly as a leader, because it's forced me to confront things about myself that I don't like, or other people don't like about me, and then it helped me to actually find strategies and tools to work with that. And Andrew, I'd like you to sort of talk a little bit about some of the experience you've had in coaching and what the sorts of coaching can have lots of different forms. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. I'll probably start by talking about the difference between mentoring and coaching. If you think of when you're working with people, you sort of have times when you tell people what to do, sorry microphone, and you have other times when you ask people what to do, yeah? Mentoring goes down this end towards telling and guiding more, and coaching is definitely in the area of asking, okay? So just so people can understand, because a lot of people ask that question, and also some of the examples we hear today, when people are mentoring, sometimes they're actually coaching as well, because they're saying to people, what would you do in this situation? Which is a coaching style. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with mentoring and coaching and having the same person, etc. It's down to what you need. So in terms of coaching and getting the best out of coaching, the first thing I'd say to you is my favourite definition of coaching is a structured conversation with a purpose. Okay, it's that simple. It is a structured conversation with a purpose. Now, my children sometimes ask me, what do I do? Yeah? And I'm going to tell you what a coach does, and this is in Andrew's words, okay? I do probably two things. I ask people questions, and I really, really think about those questions, and then I listen. And I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And there's a reason. It's a sign from heaven that I should listen twice as much as I speak. Okay? So I ask questions and I really think about those questions, and I think about the person that I'm working with. Because as Leanne says, if I'm working with Leanne, it's all about Leanne. Then I listen to her answers, and then I think about what is the next question I can ask. Okay? The other thing that I think is really important, sometimes people ask me, do you need to have experience? You know, do you need to have experience of what somebody does to be their coach? I don't think so. I mean, I work with people in lots of different industries, and I've worked with some of the companies who are sitting here and some of the companies who are sitting there. But I need to be good at empathy. I need to be able to put myself in the other person's shoes. That's very, very important. So the fact that I've worked in a company, I worked in Diageo for over 20 years, I can put myself in people's shoes. So those 3 things I think are very important. And if you're thinking of coaching and looking for a coach, I'd say interview them like it's a job and see how good they are at those 3 things. That would be my first thing for you. And the people I've worked with who've been successful do that. So I've worked with Google. There's a very detailed process to go through when they identify their coaches. Very thorough, very thorough. But once you're one of their coaches, it's like, right, okay, go out and be your best and coach people, okay? So they're the first things I'd say. There's another thing that's trust, which Mai-san mentioned. Very, very important, building rapport and trust quickly. So find somebody who you can trust, okay? Very, very important. So you can really have the conversations that you want to have. The other thing that I've written down is, obviously, I'm an external coach. I used to be an internal coach when I worked in Diageo. Diageo has their own coaching model. As an external coach, I probably have some freedom that some of the people you might work with might not have, because I don't have an agenda except the person that I'm coaching with. I don't have anything else. Sometimes when I worked in Diageo, it might be a challenge when I was coaching somebody, because they might actually be in my team, or there might be somebody who in the future might be in my team, but I had all those relationships going on. So trying to put that aside sometimes was quite difficult. And confidentiality, which again, my son talks about. I think you've got to talk with your coach about how you work and what you want, and agree on confidentiality. So the conversations I have with people are confidential, and I get asked about them, and I have developed some skillful ways of answering the questions. Yeah, like, why don't you go and talk to the person I'm coaching? So other things on my mind would be commitment. So if you're going to go and get a coach, one of my things I always look at, if somebody says, oh, I'll do 2 coaching sessions, I go, oh, right, okay, is there any reason for that? Because a lot of people, they go, my boss has told me to get a coach, or my boss has told me to get a mentor, and they've suggested you. But I think it's important to be committed, you know? Be committed and, you know, give some time to it, because it might take some time. So most of the stuff that I do, 6 coaching sessions, 8 coaching sessions, an hour, 90 minutes each, wherever the person wants to go, Starbucks, the office, wherever you want. What time of the day? Some people like breakfast, some people like dinner. It's entirely down to them, but be flexible for them. In terms of helping you, so that sort of gives you an idea of coaching. In terms of helping you, and why I think it can be useful if you're thinking about your career, is because of the idea of asking and helping you to create options. So I often get people who, if I'm working with them on their career and their development, will often say, I want to do this role, and I want to do it in 3 years. And then we have a conversation around, you know, okay, tell me more about that, and what's important to you. And what do you like doing? Do you like working on your own? Do you like working in groups? Do you like working lots of hours? I often provoke a bit when somebody says, I want to be the CEO, and I go, so if you were the CEO and you were really unhappy, is that a good result? So helping people at the beginning to clarify their goal through questioning can really help. So, you know, what really is your outcome you want in your career? And by the way, I'm asking you this question. You know, really think about it. What do you want? What do you really, really want in your career? Okay?
So this is the first free coaching session.
Yeah. And then the other thing your coach can do is help you create options. So, you know, I sometimes say to people, right, what are your options? And sometimes I'll say, let's play and let's create 20 options, you know, just to be creative. But coaching can help you in that way of explore and give you time. So in this room, I imagine you're all really busy people, yeah? The people I talk with, when I say to them at the end of each session, how was it? Do you know what they nearly always say? It's good to have some time to stop and think. It's good, yeah, exactly. Look, everybody's nodding their head. It's good to have some time to stop and reflect and think about things with somebody who is listening. So that would be my thoughts on.
Other thoughts on the panel, Brett?
So just from personal experience, so I never had a mentor. At any stage in my career, I've never, at least not anything formalized, and I can't even recall anyone I'd call a mentor really, even informally. Though probably 15 years ago, I did have the opportunity to have a coach at Deutsche. It was shortly after I joined, and I think, I'm not even sure the reasons behind it, but I think maybe they were doing coaches for a number of the senior folks or whatever. And so I had the opportunity to have a coach, and we, you know, as Andrew was saying, you stay committed, you have it over a period of time, you have multiple sessions to sort of figure out, you know, again, what's the purpose of this whole coaching relationship? Okay, what are you trying to get out of it? In this case, what am I trying to get out of the coach? I didn't know. I mean, I've sort of given a coach, asked to, as you say, sort of, the firm said, Brett, you know, we want you to have a coach. I don't think they knew why they wanted to have a coach. It was just it was the neat thing to do at the time, was to have coaches for senior management or something. And so it was a really good experience for me as we spent time together talking about, again, me and the direction I was going, and, you know, strengths and weaknesses, a lot of these things. And at the end, it was really, okay, I mean, we had to come to a, you know, what's the ultimate takeaway? What do you want to be delivered? What's the deliverable at the end of this coaching relationship? And, you know, in my case, and it goes to one of the first things that Andrew just said, which I thought was interesting from his coaching perspective, was I had a tendency in meetings to be passive or quiet. I would sit in meetings and just wait till they were over, and happy they were over, and then leave. And not particularly want to participate in the meeting. And as more of a senior person, that's not such a good thing. And so we came up with this goal for me to ask questions. And that's how I would participate in meetings more. So in order for me to do that, I wrote ask questions on the top of every notebook and every page in every notebook I had. It was posted at the top of my computer on my desk. And for those of you who are a little bit older, like me, it was on my Palm Pilot, okay? And I had one of those tape things that we printed out, ask questions. And so anything I looked at, or anything I carried with me to a meeting, or when I was sitting at my desk, it was all about ask questions. For those who didn't know me then, but know me now, some of who are in the room today, you know, can probably hardly believe that that was me at one stage, because I'm probably the most vocal person now in meetings, etc., and asking questions to people. And so I find coaching, so I have a place in my heart, if you will, for thinking, you know, coaching can be very effective, but it absolutely is how much you put into it.
Yeah.
And that's really, really key. You can passively go through the whole relationship and get nothing out of it, but it's how much you put into it. And I happen to still be in touch with my coach 15 years later, to the point earlier on how long the relationships go. He's not being paid anymore, but we do still have a relationship, and he's back in the UK, but we do stay in touch.
Yeah, I mean, coaching is not magic, right? And it does require you showing up, and it is hard work. And often I'll come out of the coaching session, Andrew, not with Andrew specifically, but with my coach, I'm exhausted. I actually spend an awful lot of time looking at myself and also my relationships, and that can be quite, you know, that's quite sometimes hard work. And then also taking away the actions and starting to experiment and start for that to become more a part of your leadership style. So, Akiko, in terms of your coaching experiences.
As I mentioned, in Google, we have a very structured coaching training to all the managers, actually. So if you are people managers, you have to take this coaching session to be a coach. So I was actually took the coaching, train the trainer course. So I needed to be training the coaches. And that's what our global initiative actually started from Asia Pacific about 3 years ago. And it is, again, you know, as everyone said, it's quite structured. But when you have one-on-one meetings with your people, it's really structured and asking the questions very structured manner, but also you're caring about this person to grow, because you do care about your team to grow, those individuals, and also business itself as well. So to us, coaching is really part of our business, part of the leadership, or the part of the management skills that they have to have.
Mm.
And another thing is, those are actually the managers who will be evaluated by if am I a good coach or not.
Mm.
So that is really good structure in a sense, because I like to have the feedback as a coach. Am I doing the job or not? And also when we have, let's say, the senior leadership meeting, and you find someone whom you trust and ask that person, I will do the different thing today for me to grow. Give me the feedback right after this. And then the person can come and help me to grow too, as a coachee.
You raise an important point, Akiko, which is actually about the importance of all of us becoming better coaches. And I wanted to actually ask Noe-san about, she's actually in the recruitment field, she's recruiting people, including HR professionals. And one of the interesting things you told me was that the competencies that people are looking for now in organisations, it's not just about ticking the box on the skills, it's also about some of these softer areas around coaching and developing people. Could you just talk a little bit more about that? On what you're looking for as you're recruiting people in terms of the skills they have around coaching and understanding?
It's an interesting question because I'm dealing with a lot of head of HR people across the industry. I have an opportunity to meet a specialist who is focused on coaching or diversity inclusion. But as a recruiter, I seldom have a position, the position to look for such a professional, because most likely those coach you from internally. So to be honest, dealing with a lot of HR generalist position, but not many with a trainer or coaching related positions.
Mm. And what about Robert Walters? What's important in terms of coaching? What does Robert Walters do for coaching and training around coaching?
We have several coaching. For example, when I became manager 2 years ago, we had an external coach, and he's been training manager of Robert Walters more than 20 years. He's based in UK, and as Andrew mentioned, he asked me a lot of questions. For example, on the first day, he asked me about 50 questions about yourself to identify, and he also asked me why you think so. Is that based on your own opinion, or is that because of parents, or is that because of teacher, friend? And those coaching are very helpful as a new manager.
If I could mention one other thing, I think, again, part of my role on this panel is, again, from the corporate perspective, I guess, as to, the benefits, the challenges, et cetera, that these different roles play. And based off one example at Deutsche, we had a head of a department here in Japan who was at the stage of being terminated. Okay, and it had been decided both locally, regionally, globally, okay, that he just wasn't getting the job done and that we were going to terminate him. But he reported into me, and before we terminated him, I thought he had it in him to do the things we wanted to do, but he just wasn't doing them. So I suggested that we get him a coach, and before we went through the process of termination, which is costly to the firm in terms of headcount turnover and then having to rehire and search and pay headhunter fees and all of that, let's make a small investment here in a coach, an external coach, and see if we can't turn the situation around. We did do that. We sat down with the coach very specifically and told him what we wanted out of the coach and what the changes we needed made with this individual. And the coach and this individual have spent a lot of time together over the next sort of 3 to 6 months. And as I said earlier, he put a lot into it, and he made all the changes that were needed. And he's still with us to this day, and is a very effective manager, and probably his team is one of the most unified teams we have in the firm. And this is someone who 5 years ago was basically going to be let go. Right? So it really can work if I think you clearly define what the objective is, and then again the individual puts in the effort. And one of the things that he told me was some of these things that were the changes. He said, "No one ever told me I needed to do that before." right? It was like, so he could do them. It wasn't, again, a change in his personality. It was a change in his behavior that was needed, but to things that he just didn't know were expected of him, either through poor communication or whatever the reason was. He just didn't know these 2 or 3 key things were required of him. And once he became aware of them, he was able to, you know, take them on and execute. So, I mean, again, from a corporate standpoint, there are times when it really does make sense to make the investment and save, you know, a lot of other pain and cost down the road.
Leanne, this thing about companies who use coaching, I've seen a huge rise in my time in a corporation and now in terms of companies developing their own coaching models and having their own structure and training their people to coach. So the idea of my line manager is my coach. And my most recent example is Suntory here in Japan. They've just done their first leadership program and asked people to come forward and coach their senior leaders for the first time. Because sometimes people say to me, well, what about in Japan and what about in China? But honestly, what you see is there's a growth in this, and I think that's a great comment around the cost aspect of it, because people are your biggest asset. Sorry to people who work for brands, companies and things like that, but I believe people are our biggest asset. So why wouldn't you try to get the most out of your people? And this is a great way to do it. But it is people developing their own models, and then other people actually going out and saying, actually, we've heard about this, we want to try it.
Yeah. I think for those in the room where maybe coaching programs aren't available, so I'm sure a lot of companies here have some form of coaching. So the encouragement is, the invitation to this room is to go find that, find out if you do, because sometimes also maybe it's not as well advertised as you might think. So please do that. And then even if it doesn't exist in your organisation, think about it too as an investment in yourself. And I can share from my own personal experience when I first moved to a role in a new country. I wasn't given a coach. I'd had coaches on and off throughout my career. That particular time I didn't, and I really felt I needed to. I was working with a new team. I had been in Hong Kong at the time, and I really felt that. So actually it was through the chamber, the British Chamber at the time. I've talked to a few people, found someone, and paid that myself. Put that, said, all right, we'll do this for 6 months. And it was, you know, something I talked about actually with, with my family. And we said, just like we invest in our health, we pay for gym membership, or we do other things, we invest in, the way we want to be healthy. This was an investment in me and my health, my mental health, and work, and being able to take on a new big job. So think about it as well there. I mean, obviously there are a lot of actually opportunities, and if you need to find more information about coaches that are available here in Japan, then the ACCJ can help you to find those as well. But think about it, if it doesn't exist, there's no reason why you couldn't step into that and create that opportunity, that coaching relationship for yourself.
Leanne,
Yes.
just to support what Leanne said, there's a model called the GROW model. Has anybody heard of the GROW model? So go, yeah. The GROW model was created by a racing driver in the 1960s to coach himself. That's what he created the model for. Go and Google it. And go and Google it and see, you'll find out all about it. So there is a lot of stuff, even just using that model personally can be very, very effective. And loads of stuff online, as you know, that can help you. And some people have created models where you can help yourself by using coaching techniques, yeah?
Right. Right, we're going to shift gears for a minute now. We'll come. Please write down some questions that you've got, I'm sure, working away in the back of your brain. We'll do that in a moment. I want to talk about sponsorship. Now, Sylvia Ann Hewlett, who's a very big in the coaching world, actually wrote a book in 2013. Some of you may have read it. She said, forget a mentor, find a sponsor. So that's the provocation to the group. Why bother having a mentor? Actually, you need to find a sponsor. So we talked about some of the benefits of that. But sponsorship is sometimes can be a bit of a blurry word, not always really clear. So, and I know even talking to people as we prepared for this panel, we've all actually learned a lot more about sponsorship as well. And Brett, you mentioned as well, actually, this morning, you said, well, actually, you learned a lot by being asked the question, what is a sponsor? So tell us a little bit about what you've learned.
I mean, the first time I think I probably heard the term in this regard was within the past year. I'd never heard of it. I've done, mentoring for many, many years, but sponsorship was new to me. And I didn't even know what it meant when I heard it, and I didn't actually do anything with it at the time, maybe earlier this year. Then, as I'm saying, I started preparing for this panel, I talked with our head of HR to get some information from her on it, and found out that in Deutsche globally we actually do have a sponsorship, again, a formal sponsorship program, but we don't have it in Japan. And then I looked at some of these catalyst material and found out what exactly is the definition of a sponsor. And again, all this was new to me to understand this. And so then I actually heard from one of my staff also that knew more about sponsorship than I did, that she said, Brett, you actually are a sponsor, and you've actually been a good sponsor. And I was sort of saying, okay, in what sense? And she had to explain to me sort of how I'd been a sponsor. And so I guess my takeaway on that is I guess two things. It has to do maybe a lot with the size of the organization. As I said, we're 800 people, but that's reasonably small, I guess I would say, as large organizations go. And we're fairly flat within Japan, and there's access to, I think, everybody. And therefore, in my mind, a good manager is actually the same as what we're defining as a sponsor here. A manager should be doing the types of things, advocating for their high-performing staff, giving them opportunities, assigning them perhaps projects to do that are outside of their daily role, talking about those high-performing individuals with people offshore, for example, or elsewhere in the organization for next opportunities for their career progression. These type of things. Those are all things that I think a direct manager can certainly and should be doing. Though there are limitations, and that's where I guess if you're in our Tokyo office, we have 800, the direct manager can have access to me or even some people in APAC and things like that. If you were in our London office that has 10,000 people, okay, it's a completely different story, and that's why I can sort of see now how this idea of sponsorship in the offshore organization of Deutsche, or in London particularly, I guess, really has a lot of merit, whereas here in Japan, it still is equally valid, but I think the person who can do it is actually the direct manager and be quite effective at it. And that doesn't have to be a senior manager type of person in the organization if you're in a smaller group. And that's sort of what I've taken away from
I
it.
think what we're hearing is that, sponsors are, you want your line manager to be your sponsor, and there are other people in the organisation who can also actively promote you. Have you had the experience of a sponsor?
Yes, I think so. Let's say the Google has a chief culture officer globally. It's not like a CIO or CFO or CEO, that kind of category, but we do have like a very culture is very important for this company to creating innovation. Right? So how do we make sure this culture can live in Japan as well as like headquarters? So the chief culture officer actually had when I joined Google about 4 years ago, the third day, I had a VC with her, and she gave me all this, the view and prompts, and basically gave me some kind of like listening about the story, it seems like she was my sponsor. So I've been driving the Google culture, innovation culture, not only the business side where I am sitting on, but I was an engineer and basically called Google office in Japan. So, you don't maybe realize or recognize it, but it's just there or here that happens. And another thing, if being the sponsor, is I am a mother of 9 years old and 5 years boys, monkeys still. Looking at all the mothers working so hard, and I don't think we have talked about the parenting side, but that's really another kind of like information or arts or so many things you want to learn from others. Right? And being the mother is sometimes really challenging and working as well at this stage yet. So sponsor, bring those people to me is very important. by giving them coaching or the mentoring and the sponsoring. I don't provide those things.
Yeah, I've got to watch out on this one. When I'm working with people, I often ask them who are their stakeholders, and there's a reason for it. Sometimes you can have a sponsor, and all of a sudden your sponsor goes off to another company and gets promoted. And you all know how things work in your organisations, and you have stakeholders who are influential, and you have meetings and processes. And I think thinking who are your stakeholders for your future and how can they help you. So it's not only just identifying them, but it's also thinking about what are the conversations you need to have. So I think, you know, a sponsor, I benefited from a sponsor twice in my career that I can think of, where somebody just stuck out for me and said, you're going to do this. And I know when I ask senior people about who are the people who are important in your career, most senior people have got one or two people who they go, this person really stuck in for me and took a risk with me. And that's great. But then if that person moves to another company, what do you do? So I always think, you know, sponsor, great, but also think about the stakeholders and think about the people who influence, you know, and who do you need to be talking to and what sort of conversations do you need to be having with those people?
It's kind of like Billiard. I think the influencers influencing to those people very important stakeholders for you.
Yes.
That's right. It is the ecosystem. It's not just one. And I would say that, you know, sometimes the question I would have, people will say to me, well, how do I find a sponsor? I don't know. So all this is happening behind closed doors. How do I know? I think, you know, my encouragement there is something that's definitely worked, you know, and something I talk to my team about is, you know, if you're looking to grow and develop anyway, find that 10% margin in your job today where you can actually do more than your role. Now that may mean having to make trade-offs and say what's the most important thing, how do I find that 10% margin? So that 10% margin can be really important, particularly early in your career where you can say yes to getting onto other projects, other teams, offering something beyond your immediate role. And by saying yes to those things, by being able to get involved with other projects, that's how you can get noticed. I think one of the myths that we've been taught is that if you put your head down like a good girl and do your job, someone will tap you on the shoulder and give you the promotion. I have to say that is not my experience, nor of any of most of the people that I've worked with and mentored over the years, both male or female. So my encouragement to you is to find those ways to be able to say yes to projects, to offer yourself into other teams. And by that, you know, that will provide you opportunities to be able to shine in front of other leaders who could potentially be your sponsors. And I know for me, by saying yes to being involved with a particular advertising project many years ago when I was in Australia, I said, yes, I'll help you with that project and I'll help you do that. Got noticed by somebody who was working outside the country. And later on I heard that in a closed room, when a job came up overseas, he said, I've worked with that person and I'll be happy to support her in that role. So that often that giving, that's if you're giving, that's it, but sometimes you're paying it forward for sometimes many years ahead.
Yes, that's a great story. You know, I have the same experience too, so that's great. Just one thing also to add on to that is the Google's engineering team, when we have a promotion system, it's self-promotion system. So you have to say, I am good to go to the next level, right? It's really hard. Actually, it's really hard for women, actually. And there is a data that we put together, and when the promotion cycle comes in, then we speak with the possible candidates or the leaders, good performers, saying, okay, now the promotion cycle is coming. You know, you think about it. Then the 20% boost up of the women applying for the promotion. When one time they just forgot to say so or send a message that, then 20% dropped. So naturally, a woman is more like a kind of hesitant to say that I'm good enough. Maybe this is nature. So as a leader, I think we have to encourage ourselves and also the women leaders to, tell them, okay, now your turn.
Right, well, we'd like to open up for some questions now. We've got about 20 minutes left, so we'd love to open up the floor for some questions. So one question, please. Not five, one. So just one. If you could introduce yourself and your company, please. So here. Yes, please. Yeah.
The microphone coming? Yep. Stand up.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the panelists today. My name is Rio Katori. I'm with State Street HR, and I really appreciated all the discussions that went on. I wanted to allude to what you had just mentioned, about self-promotion, and going also back to the discussion of mentee driving the relationship with the mentors. Sometimes we see hesitancy in people, to your point, and I think especially in Japan, people are a little afraid to raise their hand for various reasons, and it's difficult to keep that drive going. And I wanted to ask the panel, as senior leaders, how do you encourage that in your organization at the mentee level?
I think first of all, everyone has unconscious bias. So how could we make sure the unconscious bias to be conscious, right? So we do make sure that leaders to take the unconscious bias training, and also that everyone, I think in the Google, 20,000 people already taking this unconscious bias. Doing so, the people would think, okay, raising our hand saying self-promotion, I'm ready to go, is not beautiful. The people may think so, but it's not. Maybe they have some passion inside themselves. So just keep encouraging them and making sure the data sets that they are good enough. Right? So some kind of like a mindset things that's really, really sticking all around, especially that like Japan has a strong culture that the being, very modest, is so beautiful. But if they work hard and contribute to this economy, that's much better for everyone, right? So that's how we drive.
I guess I'd respond to that. It is a hard one. Excuse me. It's hard to sort of say you're going to go out there and just keep finding ways to encourage your staff to self-promote, whether it be male or female, right? But as we said, in this case, often the women are the ones that maybe tend to be more hesitant. I think we've tried to make sure that our managers, be they male or female, that they try and do something that Akira's mentioned, which is, you have to know your staff, and you have to be able to look inside some of the staff. They may not be showing some of that outwardly, that ability to excel in a project or raise their hand to say they want to join a project like Leanne did, back in Australia or whatever. But there are, I think, again, coming back to the responsibility of the manager, that they try and identify in their staff who they think can do well in a certain situation, and put the burden on a bit more, not on just the individual for raising their hand, because some are going to be fine to raise their hand and say they want to do more, or I want to be promoted, or can I be involved in something. Others, it's the manager, I think, who really has to, or the sponsor, for that matter, who has to identify some of these people because they've seen them around, or they saw how they worked on something, and that they need to be able to identify those characteristics and put those people forward, right? And I think so. I put the burden a lot more on the direct managers in many cases to really have to do some of that work.
I may, just add one story. When I was age 27, the Bloomberg Television, the Michael Bloomberg was brave enough to select me as a president of the Bloomberg Television in Japan and Asia Pacific. And at that time I was asked, would you like to do it? Then I said, do you want me to do it? That was my answer. And they said, no, we are asking you, would you like to do it? Do you want to do it? If not, I'm going to do it. So I said, yes, I'd love to do it. Then the people said, country manager, and also Michael Bloomberg, they said, okay, we're going to have full support to make sure you'll be successful. So that kind of engagement, I think, Brad is talking about.
What my colleagues facing a similar situation, challenges. Although identifying is very important, a lot of female potential leaders say no because they want to have a good work-life balance, or they think that they are not ready. So I think in addition to identify, it's very important to have some training. Some of my clients have 6 to 12 months training to change their mentality to be ready to the manager in Japan.
Thank you. Right, another question.
I'm just going to make an observation about having conversations with people. And I think it's interesting that we're talking about women, but nearly everybody I work with doesn't think they're half as good as I think they are. Seriously. When you talk to people and go, what would you do if you were at your best? And not many people are really living to that best. So if you're sitting here at this moment in time and thinking, yeah, I'm one of those people, don't think you're one of the few.
All right, very good. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tish Robinson from Hitotsubashi University, ICS. I want to build on this past comment about living to your best, and also Nakajo-san's comment about taking a risk at age 27 to step up in Bloomberg. Could you share some stories about how, as mentors, we can support people when they take a risk and maybe make a mistake in the learning process? Maybe they're stepping into something new that's never been done before, and always learning entails some mistakes, right? So could you share some personal stories about how you support people to either yourself making a mistake and overcoming it, or you as a mentor supporting us for making a mistake and overcoming it? Thank you.
I'll tell you a story, right? When I was a salesman, I was in the UK and I looked after the company's biggest customer. And I forgot to put a price increase through. And this customer knew our CEO, and their CEO, because that's how it all works. And I thought I was going to get the sack. I really thought I was going to get the sack. And I was in this role because the big boss had pushed me to go into this role. So I eventually went to see him and I told him what I'd done. And he asked me lots of questions. And he said to me, what would I do next time? And I told him. And then he said to me, how much money have we lost? And this is true. I told him, and he stood up and he put his hand in his pocket and he took his wallet out and he emptied it on the table and he goes, I'll put that towards it. And it makes me quite emotional because I think, I've done a lot of work in the UK building teams that are diverse, and you just have to do whatever it takes. And you have to stick up for people, and you have to, when it goes wrong, you have to reframe. You have to reframe, and you have to stick in. And it takes courage. And for me, this is what real sponsorship is. If you're going to change stuff, you have to go, I'm going to stick in there, and whatever happens, I'm going to make it happen. And people would sometimes say to me, oh, well, you're biased the other way. And I'd go, yeah, well, I believe it's the right thing. I believe it's the right thing to do. I started as the sales director and we had a team of guys who used to play football and rugby and everything. And yet when we went through our processes, the best people for us to employ were women. Yeah, the best. So we worked hard. We did everything we could, and that's what you have to do. You have to stick in and you have to go, and you have to stand up for people. And sometimes people will say, well, I see it different, and you go, that's great, and I respect your opinion. And this is my opinion. This is what we're going to do going forward. But that's just my world.
It's an interesting question, and we had our global CEO in town about a month or so ago, maybe nearly 2 months ago now. and I can't remember which meetings it was that he mentioned this, but I think in a couple of different ones, he was really encouraging people to make decisions, okay? And the point behind that was there's just not, people hide behind others, people hide behind committees often and say it's somebody else, or the committee made the decision, it wasn't me, and knowing there's not personal ownership to a lot of things. And it was frustrating him, I think, on a global basis. This wasn't a Japan-specific comment. This was globally. He was talking about this. And the request that he had, because this similar question sort of came up, is, yeah, what if I make a decision and it's wrong or it results in a loss? Again, we're a trading firm, if you will, to some extent. And so we certainly can have, significant financial losses depending on the type of decisions we're talking about. We're also in a very regulated industry, okay, which is different than many, and so you also have to be careful on that front. But his point was, and as the senior most sponsor in the organization, as the global CEO, make decisions, document them, be clear about your rationale, and he'll make sure that there's no improper repercussions or anything for it. If you did it, to the best of your ability with the proper thought process and documented it correctly, the fact that the result might have come out different than was expected, that's it requires probably a lessons learned then to find out what went wrong, and so we don't repeat that kind of, call it a mistake. But again, if the effort was made to do the right thing and document it, our view was, that's the direction we want to take our organization, and we want people thinking in that way.
Thank you very much. So, yes, ma'am.
My name is Jake Shin. About mentorship, you guys mentioned confidence. In the panel, the term confidentiality has been mentioned quite a few times. I want to ask your experience where you come to a point where your mentee would tell you something sensitive. Like, it might be, I'm just making it up, it might be something about a bias driven team. At what point you would keep the confidentiality, and what point you won't from your experience? That you would escalate to, HR.
So I guess you are talking about very confidential information, but something can be very harmful for the company or the society. Would you raise that or not? I think I would raise it, definitely.
Would you ask the person for permissions that you're going to do it?
I will encourage that person to speak up by her or himself, because they have to be responsible for, and if he or she doesn't do it, then I'll do so, maybe with him or her.
And I would support that sort of approach, and even say, yeah, but leave it up to the individual. But if they, for some reason, weren't comfortable bringing it up to whoever they need, the head of HR, the head of compliance, or whoever it might need to talk to, if they were comfortable that and I've had several of those situations where I simply asked, do you want me to proceed and have that conversation with somebody? And sometimes they've said yes, and sometimes they've said no. I'm concerned about it as an individual, and it's a problem for me in my career with relationship with my manager or whatever it is, but I don't want you to do anything about it at this time. And if they don't want me to do anything about it, I think there's probably been times where I have not said anything to anybody about it, but there probably have been a couple of times where I have said something, again, not maybe fully confident in myself. If I'm totally quiet on this and say nothing, and something happens worse in the organization as a result of this, that's going to be a bigger problem than the confidentiality, and therefore I might consult the CEO, or I might consult the head of HR, or the head of compliance, or something to sort of say, hey, and maybe I can do it on a no-name basis, right? You can divulge the content, say there's a situation, it's between two people, or whatever it might be, and you don't have to actually breach confidentiality in that case, but you can at least get another opinion to help you know if you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, be true to your own values as well.
Is there a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing.
Yeah, I was thinking all these roles have a duty of care. They have a duty of care, And I think it's important to think about what your line is. Very, very important to think. And often you can do this at the beginning when you set up the relationships. You can talk about how you can manage this sort of issue. It's made me think about what I do in terms of having those conversations up front maybe. But I think you have a duty of care that's very, very important. I think helping the person as much as you can and having the conversations with them, so you're encouraging them to speak up if possible, is important. And then if not, I think you've got to have a conversation and say, right, what can I do to help? And I'd echo what the guys have said, but duty of care springs to mind.
Thank you for the great session. I'm Tomoko Takazawa from Toys R Us Japan. I am now a strong believer of mentoring system and coaching system thanks to my previous company, Mondelez. So Leanne has been my great mentor even after I left the company, and Andrew is my great coach still, even he's not paid. But because I have experienced this great experience, I am a strong believer now. But you guys talked about investment to the people, and even when companies decided to invest in a mentoring system or coaching system, just because people never had this great experience, when people don't believe mentoring or coaching, how can you convince them that it would bring good benefit to you?
I think we had a really good example earlier on from the end of the table around recruitment, for example, the cost of recruitment as opposed to the cost of retaining people. If you actually look at the cost of losing people and go out and recruit it, we know there's a percentage of what people earn. It's not very hard to work out how much that would be. So you can actually look at in hard cash and say, right, could we invest this in a different way? I think the other thing is just, what I always do with people is I let them experiment, talk to people who work with me and, do chemistry sessions, let them experience stuff. Let them try, help them to understand what it can do. So they're the thoughts that go through my mind initially around how you can help people. Every single coaching assignment I do, and I do some mentoring as well, by the way, we always meet for an hour. I meet the stakeholders, I meet the person I'm going to work with, and then at the end of it I go, next step is you decide if you want to work with me. You don't have to tell me now. You can send me an email or tell your HR team or whatever. But actually go through that process, make it easy for people to see what the benefits are. Does that answer the question?
I'm guessing that maybe the only people that wouldn't believe are those who've never experienced it or have had a bad experience, perhaps a bad relationship. And this idea of chemistry between the two individuals involved, that's important. Absolutely, you can have a completely ineffective relationship, mentoring or sponsorship or any relationship, if there's bad chemistry between the two people. And that's a matter of just trying to work things out and give someone another chance then, I think, with the different, figure out what went wrong the first time, try and fix it the second time, so you get a better fit and match between it. But I'd be surprised at anybody who has experienced it and had a neutral to positive experience, hopefully, who would think it's not meaningful.
I know, and we will have to close off, unfortunately, but one of the new programs that we've set up within the ACCJ is the Young Professionals Forum with a focus on mentoring. I'd like to invite Sarah to come up and share a little bit about the program so you know actually how you might access that. Sarah.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists for the insightful discussions. And thank you for giving me a few minutes to share about the Young Professional Forum. So thank you very much. So I put on a slide here the initiatives that we have run so far. But basically, the Young Professional Forum is an initiative that we have started last year. And we really aim at providing opportunities to create new connections with peers and business leaders to young professionals, so-called under 35 years old. This has been set up by the ACCJ, not by me, so please no complaint. And we also want to help these young professionals build professional and leadership skills. So now tying back into the panel, we know the necessity of having mentors, sponsors, and coaches, but it's not always easy. So we're trying to have these sessions, and we have upcoming sessions with Brett Dandoy, actually in November. We'll have Sarah Casanova, the representative director and CEO of McDonald's, and also Rachel King, who's the head of international trade at the British Embassy. And recently, earlier this month, we had a networking session for young women in particular. We had 50 plus attendees and 12 mentors, and it was a great success. So we're told to do this again. So there is clearly a need for organizations like the ACCJ to facilitate these activities. Now, just before I finish, one ask to the senior management. I think there are a lot of senior people in the room. Very often, the young professionals have given us the feedback that it's difficult for them actually to go to these events. They are afraid to ask to leave the desk early or go out for lunch to attend these events. So I think it's very important for management to have clear encouragement and clear support to their staff in their companies to attend these events. Not necessarily the ACCJ is a great one, but even within your industry, there are many professional associations that your staff will benefit from. But if you do not tell them, please go sign up, go attend these events, many of them are afraid to ask, especially, I feel this is true in Japan. So please give your young professional staff your support in your company. And to the young professional, please join us. Feel free to reach out. We're looking for new ideas and motivated people. So I'm welcoming anybody that would like to be involved. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'd like to close by thanking Brett, Mayu, Andrew, and Akiko for the generous donation of their time and energy today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.